The Lost in Transition podcast is sponsored by Health IQ, an insurance company that helps health-conscious people like runners, cyclists, and triathletes get lower rates on their life insurance. Go to healthIQ.com/try to support the show and see if you qualify. Welcome to the Lost in Transition podcast. I am your host, Chris Gerard. We're into the month of December, if you can believe that. I hope your off-season is going well. I've been logging a lot of running miles lately, headed toward a 50K in March. We'll see how that goes. A lot of running miles to log here over the next few months. Let us know what you're doing, what races you're working toward, either in the off-season or in the 2018 season. On our last show, we talked, of course, with our co-host and coach, Lana Burrell, about how to plan your 2018 season, so hopefully you're making some good progress on that. You can find that show and all the others in our archive at the website, losttransition.com, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new shows. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, the TuneIn Radio app, on YouTube. Many ways to find the show, and follow us on Facebook and Twitter as well for all the social media updates. Let us know who you'd like to hear from in upcoming shows or what topics you'd like to see covered. Coming up very soon, we're talking to Ironman Florida winner and guest of the show from last year, Elise Gallegos. She is a lot of fun to talk to, and I'd like to get her perspective on the overall win there at Ironman Florida, so we'll be talking to her. Also, Derek Tingle, right here in Knoxville, went from an Ironman all the way to the Xterra World Championship the next year as he transitioned into the dirty side of the sport. We'll be talking to him on an upcoming show. Coming up in the new year, we're going to look at the topic of coaching in triathlon. Who needs a coach? What you should look for? And we're going to talk to several people about that and get their perspective. We've got lots of great shows on the schedule, and your suggestions just keep making them better. Of course, on that last show, we talked about planning the 2018 triathlon season, and I've been hard at work at that ever since. As I mentioned, the 50K coming up in March, and finally decided to put a full-distance triathlon on the schedule in 2018. Very much a firm believer that you do not have to do an iron distance triathlon to be considered a triathlete. There are some very, very talented people I know who only race Olympics or halves or even just sprints and make that their focus. It is all completely valid. However, it's also something that just about everyone wants to do at some point in time. So I've caved in, broken down, and am now signed up for my first full distance, and looking forward to that. So we're going to talk with Ann and Andy Vidro and Doug Tuttle from the Michigan Titanum Triathlon. That is the goal race for me next year in August. I'm looking forward to it, particularly as you'll hear in the interview. It's actually very close to where I grew up and logged quite a few bike miles as a teenager. So it'll be kind of a trip down memory lane. The Michigan Titanium race may be familiar to some of you already. In fact, one of the former guests of the show, Susan Haig, has raced it several times. And of course, we talked to Susan just before she finished her 100th iron distance race. She is well up over 100 now. The craziness is not stopping with Susan. That's a fun show, too. Go back and check that out. But for right now, excited to talk to Ann, Andy, and Doug from Michigan Titanium next on the Lost in Transition podcast. Joined by Ann and Andy Vidro and Doug Tuttle from the Michigan Titanium Triathlon, here to talk about what it's like to produce an independent multi-sport event that includes a full-distance 140.6-mile option. Ann, Andy, and Doug, welcome to Lost in Transition.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Chris. Good to be here.
So how long has the Michigan Titanium multi-sport event been going on?
We're headed into our 7th year, if you can believe it. So it seems like only yesterday we started it. And here we are creeping up on, hopefully soon 10 years. But we're heading into our 7th year now.
There's only a handful of independent full-distance races around the country. Now, did that full-distance event begin at the very beginning, or did it get added in over a few years down the road?
It was our original race. When we first started it, we said, let's put on a full distance race. we actually added the other distances as we've gone along. Now, this is a sister race to another race that we put on in June called the Grand Rapids Triathlon. But this one, we started a year after that, and we said, let's do a full distance race. I had done a full distance branded race elsewhere and had really enjoyed the experience and thought, hey, are we crazy enough to try and put one of these on and talk to Andy about it? And they said, hey, let's give it a try. So we did, and we were successful in that the first year. And as we've gone along, we've added the other distances just to help support and get more athletes involved, adding the half distance as well as the Olympic. And then we also have the AquaBike, the relays, and the duathlon. So it's a full day, lots of different events going on, but we've really enjoyed and kept the full distance, full triathlon as the cornerstone of the race from the get-go.
So I was lucky enough to grow up in the West Michigan area, riding some of the very same roads actually that you use for the bike course. Of course, now living down here in East Tennessee, everything's a mountain or a hill. And from people listening all over the country looking into races for 2018, tell us a little bit, Doug, about the course that you've got laid out there at Titanium Man.
Yeah, we have one of the most beautiful inland lakes, and we have people who come in and swim in our lake there and say it's one of the best lakes that they've swam in the States. It is a clean lake. It's actually doubles as a water reservoir for the local township there. So it's drinking water quality. They don't allow gas-powered boats on it. So we have a 2-loop, 2.4-mile swim in that lake for the full distance. And then we ride out into the country roads towards your old hometown for the bike ride. And then we come back and we run through some of the local subdivisions and areas for the run to finish it out right there in Grand Rapids Township.
You know, the lake is one thing that I've read a lot and heard a lot from people that have done the race, that just the quality of it. Open water swimming is such a point of anxiety for so many people, and it's got to help when you know that not only is the water quality good, but that there's not going to be any boat traffic and that you'll have some visibility, be able to see where you're going. I know some people don't like visibility. They don't like being able to see what's down there. Actually, one person mentioned that there may have been somebody taking scuba diving photos in years past. Is that true, or is that an urban legend that got started?
No, that's true. Yeah.
They weren't dead bodies, at least, so that would contaminate the drinking water.
Yeah,
correct.
And Andy, I know you started Tries for Health. Tell us a little bit about your motivation for leaping into the world of race directing.
Yeah, we started to begin our journey in race directing. So we started out with the Grand Rapids, and then the year later, Doug roped us into putting on the Michigan Titanium, which has been a great thrill.
So what got you into, I know you've also raced, what got you into triathlon as a sport, and then what made you want to organize your own race?
So we actually, Andy and I didn't know each other at the time, and we were both doing triathlon ourselves, just as you kind of get up and, outside of your high school sport, you might say, and you're looking as an adult for something to stay healthy with. We both had chosen triathlon. And then when we met, he had actually come to one of the races I was participating in. And we just noticed some things about the organization of the race that seemed, a little off. Let's say, the bike course had been marked the wrong distance. Some people were riding right up into transition, and you know how it goes. You kind of sit and go, man, wow, if we put on that event, this is what we would have done. And ironically, we had a trip planned out to Glacier National to hike the backcountry for a week after that event. And the whole time we were there, we talked about triathlon and organizing, and by the time we came off the trail, we had decided to put on a world-class triathlon in Grand Rapids, and we just felt like we had enough friends who were in this in the sport that were leaving the area for the longer distances and for good quality events, and we thought, wow, why don't we keep them at home? And so when we got back, we called a bunch of our friends, and the first year we put on the Grand Rapids Triathlon, we had 950 athletes show up.
Wow.
And so we knew we had hit the mark. We knew that this area was ready for that type of an event. And so, after that first year of the Grand Rapids Triathlon, we, in talking with Doug, we just knew also that this area could support a full iron, and there weren't really any nearby. Everyone was leaving for a few days in order to do one. And our goal, we're all athletes. And so our goal is always to really wow those athletes and kind of treat them like kings and queens. And so when people do our full, hopefully they're treated even better than some of those large name brand full iron distances out there. So that's really our goal with our events, is that, we are athletes, we know what we would want in an event, and that's really the approach we take.
In that transition from being an athlete to a race director, who's also an athlete, of course, for each of you, what's one thing you never really thought of as an athlete, but now you think about all the time as a race director? Andy, we'll start with you.
All right. Well, really the time, the commitment that a race director puts in. I mean, really we put in, after, the last finisher of either one of the events, we start brainstorming what we can do and how we can improve next year's race. Doing a race, you just get there in the morning and you take off and you cross the finish line and then you head home. You don't really think about what's going on afterwards, outside of if you volunteered before for some races. But yeah, that's the time that the director and the volunteers and the champions involved.
I think for me, it's the safety. As an athlete, of course, I think about, I want to make sure I can get through the swim and that, my bike is safe. I don't, there's no car incidences or other bike incidences. But boy, as a race director, I will tell you, I stay up at night, at times thinking about the things that we can do in order to really make our event the absolute safest possible. And we go through a lot of training as race directors. So Doug, Andy, and I are all level 2 race directors through the USAT. We take it very seriously. And we go through a lot of continuing education and to find ways to make sure that we're doing everything we can as race directors to keep those athletes safe.
So we've got the time commitment, we've got the safety. Doug, what's one thing that you've noticed about race directing?
Well, both of those were great answers and definitely things that I noticed. I would say probably one other thing, if I could add to it, is just the sheer amount of volunteers that are needed to put on a race and the support that we need to have from the community to be able to put this on. And we've got great support in the Grand Rapids area from many people that come out and help support this race. Specifically for the Michigan Titanium, we get between 400 and 500 volunteers on a race day. And that just blew me away when we started to count how many volunteers we needed to man each aid station or to pass out T-shirts at the expo or to keep people safe as they're turning on corners or any other of the little areas of minutia that happened throughout the race. Just had no idea what went into and how many people it took to put a race on.
With this event existing now into its 7th year, triathlon, a lot of us, have kind of been in the sport for around that period. I'm going into year 6. A lot of people in my greater circle in the sport have been doing it for, somewhere around a half a dozen years. What changes have you noticed in the sport at large, and specifically changes that have affected your races over the past few years? Doug, we'll start with you.
I started in the sport back in 2008. So I'm coming up next year will be 10 years that I've been around triathlon. And I have seen a lot of changes. And I think right when I was coming in, it was really taking off and it was becoming quite mainstream. I know when I first started to talk to people about doing a triathlon, they assumed that I was going to Hawaii and participating in the Ironman triathlon in Hawaii, and I had to educate them on what it was. Where now I feel like people have a better understanding of what triathlon is. It seems to be a little more mainstream, that people understand it. Certainly, one of the things that we've seen are just the acceptance and the excitement that we see from the local retailers in our area. I know we've got some bike shops and some shoe shoe stores that really have embraced triathlon and get behind it. It's no longer such a unique sport that people really don't understand it. So I really appreciated that growth that's happened over the past decade of my involvement in it.
Andy and Ann, what changes have you noticed over that time period?
So I think it's been, especially in most recent years, is the focus on youth. And I think that that's coming from, USA Triathlon, and they're realizing that you want to fill that pipeline of athletes coming in. And so they've put forth a lot of effort to, right now anyways, women's triathlon is a part of the NCAA at certain colleges. They are, last year we were the state of Michigan state championship for high school level. So, there's some different things that they're doing to really put that emphasis on youth, which I think is exciting because, our typical age group athlete in this sport ranges right around early 30s to mid 50s. That's the bulk of the athletes. And so to see that younger population come in is doing exactly, I think, what the USAT wants, and that is making them hopefully athletes for life, and that's the future of triathlon.
We're lucky enough to have one of those NCAA schools about 2 hours up the road, East Tennessee State University here, actually. Been guest on the show before. Andy, what changes have you seen over the years?
Seeing families do this, so you see that it's more a family sport. And before, I guess, in the past few years, and I guess it may be because of what we've done to our events, but we have a kids event as well as as an adult triathlon. So you can have the kids participate as well as the adults.
I've been seeing a lot more of that as well. I know even in the past handful of years, a lot of the first triathletes I met were either single people or people that were doing it on their own without really the accompaniment, support, and let alone also co-participation of their family. And I've seen more and more now entire families that have, both parents racing, kids racing or volunteering or out there taking pictures or cheering or something like that. And I think that not only helps the sport, but it really helps the athletes too, because it is a huge time commitment. And the more support you can have and the more you can kind of make it a rewarding experience for the whole family, I'm sure that also helps, certainly. As far as organizing an independent full-distance triathlon, like I said, at last Google search, I think there's maybe 10 or 12 in the entire country. What are some of the biggest advantages in producing an independent full-distance triathlon? And then what are some of the biggest challenges in organizing an event of that scale? Andy, we'll start with you.
I would say, the joy is to see, having our local athletes be able to sleep in their beds and get a good night's rest. Because we've all done it, and we know traveling is not necessarily the easiest way. But I mean, we love people coming in. I'm not saying that's the main one. I know,
Anne, working on the finance side of things, you're probably always very aware of those economies of scale. And as triathletes, we're always prone to splurging a bit on races, but it's also nice when a full distance race doesn't set you back like a mortgage payment. So without giving away any trade secrets or anything that's proprietary, how do you manage to offer early registration for the full at less than half of the price that you see a lot of the MDOT races go for?
It is, it kind of goes to your previous question, what are the pros and cons of it being an independent? It's, the pro is that it's not all about the numbers, but the con is that sometimes it can be a challenge because it's not all about the numbers. And so for us, we don't have a board of directors to report to, or we don't have, shareholders to answer to that are trying to hit certain numbers. It's really Doug, Andy, and I making those decisions. And again, being athletes, we are trying to make the best event possible. And, we all have full-time jobs and we do this as a passion. So, we're not trying to, make our mortgage payment off of race directing either. We do this for the community. We do this so that we can make a nice donation to World Vision and to the local YMCA. And so we have some different motivations than maybe some of the larger branded races. So we can still provide great service and a great product, So I think that, being smaller, being nimble, and us being able to make the decisions ourselves, we just find different ways to be able to still offer that quality product to the athlete.
A lot of logistics obviously go into the production of a race event like this, because we've been talking about the full distance, but there's also a half distance, Olympic distance. Is there also a sprint distance, or am I making that up?
There is no sprint distance in the Michigan Titanium. No, just the Olympic, the half, and the full. But we do offer the AquaBike, so just the swim and the bike, as well as duathlon. We do a bike run event. So we have several different events that start at several different times throughout the morning. So it's kind of a running commentary in the morning that once we finally get every single race started out on the course, we can take one small sigh of relief, and then we take another one when everyone's out of the water. We take a big sigh of relief once everyone's out of the water and out on the courses.
Health IQ uses science and data to secure lower rates on life insurance for triathletes. You know the health benefits that triathlon brings to your life, and now there's a life insurance company that takes that into account for their policies. 56% of Health IQ customers save between 4 and 33% on their life insurance, and Health IQ can save their customers up to 33% because physically active people have a 56% lower risk of heart disease, 20% lower risk of cancer, and a 58% lower risk of diabetes compared to people who are inactive. It's just like saving money on your car insurance for being a good driver. Health IQ can save you money on your life insurance for living a health-conscious lifestyle. These savings are exclusive to Health IQ, and you must qualify in order to get those special rates. You can visit their site for more details. And this is an interesting fact. Life insurance companies calculate your policy rates based on your nearest age, not your actual age. And of course, rates increase as you get older. Unlike triathlon, where we're always rounding our age up to whatever we are at the end of the year, your life insurance age, if you are halfway between 39 and 40, you can lock in the best rate possible by getting a free quote today at our unique Lost in Transition URL. To see if you qualify, get your free quote today at healthiq.com/try, or mention the promo code TRY when you talk to a Health IQ agent. That's healthiq.com/TRI. Over the period of 7 years producing the 2 races that you produce each year, what's one of the most memorable experiences where you looked at it yourself and said, I can't believe that this is happening? Good, bad, funny, you name it. What's one that stands out? And we'll start with you.
Oh, definitely 2 years ago now it was. We had to call the event off midday because of weather. We had a storm that was coming in, and we'd had that before. And, in the morning we knew it was a possibility, but we decided, as athletes, we get it. Like, you want to race. And so our motto is always, the event will go on. And so we started as normal. It looked good. And, some years we've had it where a cloud is coming right at us and it actually goes around us and the event is never affected. So we kind of hoped for that again, but it was about noon on that day. So we hadn't officially had any of our halvers actually cross the finish line yet. We had a lot of the fulls still out on the bike, and our Olympics had come in, but we literally we tried to pause the event, and then, lightning struck near the race site, and then, the sheriff and the medical team said, you're done, we're shutting it down. So we had to actually go out with U-Haul trucks and buses and pick people up. And yeah, that was a day where we still look back and go, how on earth did we ever get through that? But, we did the best we could with what we had, and we truly tried to push through. But with a distance like this, there's really not a lot of delays or things. And because it was a midday storm, you just had to go forward with it. So that was definitely the most memorable for me.
I'm sure that stands out, and that's something that I've definitely heard from other people as well that raced that year and were able to finish just in time. I've talked to a couple people that did the Olympic distance, and also a couple people that got pulled from the course. But that's just the risk you run for pretty much any time during triathlon season in most parts of the country. There's always that chance. In fact, the half I just completed in October was 6.5 hours of, I finished before that, but the entire race was raining between steady and downpouring with 30-mile-an-hour winds the entire time, but no lightning, so the race went on.
Yeah.
You never know. That's always a possibility. Now, as far as people, you meet a lot of people, I'm sure, that are doing this race for maybe their first race, first full race, or first Olympic or half distance, or somebody else with maybe an inspiring story, with a funny story. Doug, what stands out for you as far as a memory?
Oh, there's so many, Chris, and I was just running through my mind of all the different stories. I mean, we had weddings as people finished the event. We've had great stories of husbands and wives. Andy and I walking with a husband out on a course, and he's near medical concern issue that we almost had to pull him, and yet he still finishes. But I think probably the best memory and what continues to push us through is always the last finisher every year. And usually, just speaking honestly, Chris, right about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, because our event goes till midnight, we're usually starting to drag a little bit. We've been up since 4 a.m. We're feeling a little tired. And then when that last finisher comes across, and I'll never forget the very first year especially, the last finisher came across the finish line just a couple minutes before midnight. And as he was walking up the road towards the finish line, we had our entire medical crew following him. So there were police, there were ambulances, there were escort vehicles in front and behind him. And I think we all bawled like babies as he crossed the finish line. It's such an emotional experience, and watching him out there for nearly 17 hours working at that to complete that event. That's what pushes me to continue to do this year after year.
Just the completion of an event like that is so amazing when you stop and think about the distance and the effort involved. And then I know, some people that are maybe more at the front of the pack, or even middle of the pack will, not necessarily look down at people at the back of the pack, but kind of feel like, wow, I worked really hard to finish in 10 hours or something like that. But then when you really stop and think about it, those people finishing in 15, 16, or even 17 hours are working so hard and suffering so much longer. It's just really, it gives a whole new perspective to everybody kind of bringing stuff in at their own level. And so that's great that you can welcome the last finishers to the line like that and really celebrate their achievement as well, because it certainly is one. For people racing the full distance for the first time, what is something that you all, having produced races and raced yourself, what's some general advice for racing the full distance, and then anything specific to the Michigan Titanium full distance that people might want to be prepared for or aware of? Andy, we'll start with you.
Well, getting into a full obviously is talk to a coach and put together a training schedule for yourself. But with ours, we offer what's nice is we offer kind of a training day about a month prior to our race. So you're able to kind of get an AquaBike in. So you're able to swim in the water as well as hit the bike course. So that is an advantage that way as well. We are, what I feel is we're very open race directors. So if you email us, we'll respond. We have great staff in that way that can help you along the way. But yeah, a full distance is amazing. It's a great feat to accomplish. Either get it off your bucket list or have it count down however many you need. If you want to do the 102 or something like that, you can be crazy like that. But I would say our full is very comfortable. Great water, a rolling bike course, and a lightly rolling run as well. So. Great support and just a lot of fun being West Michigan.
And what about you, somebody doing the full at Michigan Titanium for the first time? What should they know?
Yeah, personally, from biking the bike course, it's a tough one. We were named one of the top 5 toughest triathlons in the country by Triathlon Business International a couple years ago. And I hear that a lot from athletes. And I think mainly because they come to Michigan not thinking that we have that type of elevation on a course. But when you're doing this type of distance, sooner or later, you're going to hit some peaks and valleys there. So I think the bike course sometimes surprises people and how challenging it can be if you're not ready for that. So if you think it's flat, it's not. Is it the toughest out there? No, but I do think that you need to be aware of the elevation. I think the other thing is the heat. Mm-hmm. So, it never fails, it seems like, that week in August of our event, it does, we've seen 90 plus degree temps. So, making sure you're training for that and staying well hydrated and, being prepared to endure that type of temperature.
So, Doug, we've talked about scheduling, we've talked about heat, we've talked about be prepared for a rolling bike course. Any other things that you'd add to that for a first-time titanium person? And I'm asking for the audience, but I'm also asking for myself because for some reason I haven't mentioned this entire recording so far, but this is my planned first full distance. So I'm looking for any information I can get.
Absolutely. No, Ann and Andy covered some great points and absolutely great advice for those doing their first full, especially at the Michigan Titanium. The one other thing that I would add is fine tune your nutrition plan. Obviously, when it comes to doing a race of this caliber that you're going to be burning that many calories an hour, you need to have a fine-tuned nutrition plan. So if you don't have a coach that you're working with or an organization that can help you put that together, I would encourage that. We have a company, specifically Athletic Mentors, that is one of our sponsors that does a great job putting those plans together for people if they need that. But your nutrition plan is very, very important, at least for the first 2/3 of the event. Now, when you get out on the run and you're sick of goo packets and you've got to try something else just because your stomach needs something other than goo, then do what you need to. But you also want to make sure through that heat, through the bike course, you want to make sure that you can make it through and still have some energy for that run. So fine-tuning the nutrition plan would definitely be my advice for preparing for the full distance.
So I'm definitely liking the course personally because it is a trip down memory lane. Actually, either one of your races would be, as we mentioned, growing up mere miles from where the bike course is, riding a lot of those same roads. In fact, it reminded me of my first ever century ride. I was probably about 14 at the time on a mountain bike. And didn't really have bottle cages, so I filled up a backpack with Nalgene bottles.
Oh, no way.
I started at 6 a.m. without the plan even to do a century as much as I planned to ride from dusk till dawn, or from dawn till dusk in the middle of June. And I made it to 2 o'clock in the afternoon and couldn't walk the next day. I made it 108 miles at like a 13 mile an hour average on this mountain bike. And looking back, I couldn't, I'm in the best shape of my life and I still don't think I could do that. So,
oh my word, that's awesome.
So that'll be a trip down memory lane for us for sure. But, the logistics of planning something like this, there's the funding, there's the permits, there's traffic that you got to think about. If all of those things that are the bane of race directors everywhere were no issue, where would you want to organize a triathlon, whether in West Michigan or anywhere in the country or the world? Doug, we'll start with you.
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, there's so many great venues. Obviously I've lived in West Michigan all my life. And so I'm a little partial to this area. I would love to be able to have an event that is actually takes place partly downtown Grand Rapids. We have the Grand Rapids that go right through Grand Rapids.
Right. The name's there for a reason.
Exactly. However, it's not swimmable at this point. So if money and I could magically make those rapids swimmable, I would love to do an event in my hometown here in Grand Rapids.
And Andy, what about you? Dream triathlon course or location?
Wow, I'm sitting here thinking, and I don't know that I can come up with one, Chris. I feel like, I do think about if you did it in another location, the difficulties that come into play. Excuse me, we've had people approach us and, suggest other locations, and just the logistics is, from a distance would be so difficult. But I'm trying to think, very beautiful and warm at a all-inclusive resort, maybe.
That's always nice. I think Island Home or the Island House Triathlon is based on that, but that's invite only.
Oh, wow. Really? Okay. Yeah.
That's where all the pros go and hang out this time of year.
Yeah. That's probably where I would go.
Yeah, that is a great question. I mean, I do love being able to put something on at home. The logistics and everything to be able to handle it from a driving distance is very nice. But anywhere in the world, I would say, New Zealand,
yes.
Anywhere beautiful, Thailand, something like that.
There are no shortage of great places out there, but hopefully everyone can see that maybe isn't from the area like we are. That West Michigan has an awful lot to offer, and the summertime is just a beautiful time to be up there. Of course, you get the heat and humidity, but it's kind of tempered by the presence of the lake, and just a great time to be up in the Mitten State. Now, the Grand Rapids Triathlon, like we also mentioned, is coming up in June. If somebody's maybe already got a race scheduled for that weekend in August, but wanted to come up and try out one of your races in June. And I know there's a half an Olympic. What all options are available?
And a sprint as well.
And a sprint.
Yeah, and aquabikes and relays.
And this one goes on a slightly different course, but also kind of coming out of the Grand Rapids area and heading off toward the east in Ionia County. Is the bike course a little bit flatter on that, from what I've heard?
Yes. Yeah, I would say it's a little more flat. It's flatter. Still some rollers, but nothing significant.
Certainly. So for people that want to break out the disc wheels and do 300 watts or something like that, there's their chance.
Yes, exactly.
That's not the crowd that I'm in, but more power to them. Now, if people want to sign up for either one of these races, I know Michigan Titanium site is mititanium.com. And what's the Grand Rapids Triathlon website?
GrandRapidsTri.com or Grand Rapids Triathlon, either one.
Perfect. And people can look for that and find more info there. And are you all on social media as well? I think I've seen a Facebook page, some posts from the 2015 storm up there.
Oh, yeah. Facebook. Yep. We're out there on Twitter and I think Instagram. We've got one going out there, too. So, yep, we're definitely out there.
Awesome. Well, we're looking forward to racing the race this upcoming season, and hopefully people that are looking to maybe do something out of their own backyard, or any listeners that are up there in the Michigan area, will check you guys out. And Ann, Andy, and Doug, thanks so much for joining us on the Lost in Transition podcast.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks a lot, Chris.
Our thanks again to Ann, Andy, and Doug from Michigan Titanium Race for joining us here on the Lost in Transition podcast. Remember to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, the TuneIn Radio app, on YouTube. And watch out for those upcoming shows coming your way as well. Elise Gallegos is coming up, Ironman Florida winner and previous Lost in Transition guest. Derek Tingle joins us to talk about going from Ironman on road 1 year to Xterra World Championships in Maui the next. And we'll kick off the new year with a perspective on coaching in triathlon, who needs a coach, what to look for. That is all coming your way. And if you subscribe, you will not miss an episode. Available for listening anytime as well at losttransition.com. Show notes available there. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Our handle on Twitter at Lost Transitions. And let us know who you'd like to hear on upcoming shows and what topics you'd like to see covered. Until next time, I'm Chris Gerard. May all your transitions be smooth.